House. It's good to see you all here today. Before I introduce Norbert, I'll just explain the structure. Simple enough that Norbert Lange will read with translations by Adam Sachs, with and with a collaboration that I'm doing, and also I may read a translation that is by a third person with him at the end. Then we'll just take a brief break of a couple of minutes and we'll proceed to a close listening radio program, which will be 30 minutes. And this will be available on Penn Sound. And then after that, we'll have the reception. So there will be the radio show, then the reception. And you're all welcome to stay for that. Welcome to Kelly Wright's house. I'm so happy to have my friend Norbert Lange here today. Norbert Lange was born in Poland in 1978. He came to Germany with his parents in 1981, growing up in the Rhineland. And since 2008, Lange has been living in Berlin. He is the founder and member of Lyric Knappschaft Schönberg and was the editor of the trilingual literary magazine Radar. In 2009 and 2010, he led the poetry chat in E-Multi-Poetry, a European project for collectively writing poems. He and poet Léonce Lupet edit the magazine Karawa.net, that's Karawa.net. And so far he's published 2 books of poetry and a collection of essays, as well as bilingual selections of British and North American poets, among them Alan Fisher, Charles Olson, George Oppen, Jerome Rothenberg, and me. I'm Charles Bernstein. Norbert Lange. Welcome to have you. So you're going to, Adam Sachs will now read with Norbert, and I'll come back in a second.
So, hi, hello. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that you are here as well. Thanks you. Well, I guess we just start organizing things. Oh, yeah. This is called Die Stare Jertojas. It's about a poet I hold very dear. It's about Kurt Schwitters. Haben wir im Stich gelassen die Stare Jertojas, die noch singen, der Insel ihr Lied noch kratzen, zitieren der Luft ihr Alphabet nach Schnabel gemahlen und setzen Wolkenfragmente von Wolken in Wolkenrahmen. Aus diesem Leim zusammen fügen sie die Welt an ihren Notenfüßen im Obertonbereich an Bäume gehängt, zerschneiden Luft, bestreuen den Kammerboden, in Klammer gesetzt ans Fenster, bedecken mit Zeichen das Haus. So singen sie, vermischt zu Nokia-Klingeln die Laute, darüber die Stimme düst, in ihnen gelöst von der Kehle, keinen Schaum rasiert, den Kopf hört zu. Da, 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 jet, oh, bi, 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 bi. In der Krone einer alten Kiefer am Strande von Wieg auf Föhr hörte ich Schwitters jeden Morgen seine Lautsonate üben. Er zischte, sauste, zirpte, flötete, gurrte, buchstabierte. Hans Arp.
Now in English. The starlings of Hiatoya. We abandoned them, the starlings of Hiatoya, which still sing, rasping out their song of the isle, quoting their alphabet of air, milled and painted by beak, and placing cloud fragments from clouds in cloud frames. Out of this glue, they piece together the world. On their note feet, in the realm of most high harmony, hung from trees, slicing air, peppering the chamber floor. bracketed in the window, covering the house in symbols. So they sing, mixed with Nokia's ringing, the sounds bleak above the voices, let loose from throats, shaved without foam, the head. Listen. Da, 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 yet, 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 yet. Ooh. Bee, 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 bee. In the topmost branches of an old pine along the beach in Wick auf Föhr, I heard Schwitters practicing his Lautsonate. Every morning he hissed, whizzed, chirped, piped, cooed, spelled. Hans Arp.
And the next one is called Das letzte Gemäldegedicht der Saison. I don't know if you have this here as well. Poets writing about paintings. We'll probably have those here too. And we had a year or two, or I had a year or two where I thought, people are writing just too many poems about paintings. So, das letzte Gemäldegedicht der Saison, which is translated as
The last painted poem of the season.
huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail, or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Kubla Khan. Alle Wege über die Wetterkarte münden auf den Routenplaner, geleitet von der Frauenstimme aus den Boxen in die Boxen, die Ohren vom Fahrer in den Poetenkasten, wo ihre holde Stimme wohnt, mit Fühlern und Zangen. Sachte, mit zärtlichen Hieben den Gehörknöchelchen schlägt, bis es aufschäumt zu den Ohren heraus. Liebe in die Daumen und Finger der Hände, wo es am Lenker seltsam kribbelt. Die den Wagen auf der Landstraße halten, die den göttlichen Finger über die Karte gleiten lassen, die Hände haben die Straße glatt gestrichen. Sie eine ausgerollte Zunge vorm Wagen, auf der im glänzenden Sonnenschein lachende Blumen und Bäume, Bäume, die ihren Mündern Drachen zerkauen, wie bei Charlie Braun hoch oben, im Rückspiegel die Sonne als Kürbiskopf, noch sehr freundlich. Nachdenken über die Stimme auf der Zunge der Ansage der Sprecherin im Studio mit dem Vibrato, als sollte sie eigentlich Porno synchronisieren, während auf der Windschutzscheibe Bäume, Landschaft, na, reim dich, wie etwas frühsommerlich die Fahrt in die Mark Brandenburg suggerieren, während amerikanisch jemand Twister, jemand ganz deutlich auf der Landstraßenzunge Twister, den Böenkragen hochgeschlagen, sie zu verwüsten beginnt, Knospen und Papillen am Boden der Mundhöhle, Blick nach oben zum Gaumenhimmel, ein Vogelschwarm mit Millionen Flügelschlägen, im Schlauchtuch der Wind. Noch ein schöner Sommertag, von Hand gezeichnet, mit dem Bibidi-Bip-Bip, Bibidi-Bip der Windrose. Den Böenkragen hochgeschlagen, schraffiert er die Fläche hellgrün, der Anonyme, über der Landstraße, verreibt mit dem Daumen das Graphit der Mine auf dem Boden, die Bleistiftspitze zwischen den Lippen an die Zunge tippt, mit der Zunge schlägt gegen den Gaumen, unter dem Gewitterwolken sich aufbauen, sich ballen zum Babyface, einer Superzelle, die auf eine Luftwalze trifft. Eine leichte Brise, die mit dem Zeiger ganz weit nach oben rutscht auf der Beaufort-Skala, an Lautstärke zunimmt. Leichtes möglicherweise oder mäßiges möglicherweise Schneefegen unter den Augen des Malers, möglicherweise Hagel, Hagel, Hagel. Auf der Wetterkarte der Inneren, wo der Finger Gottes Ortschaften abfährt und Häuser wie Farbtropfen verschmiert, eine Vollbremsung. Als würde die Landschaft, nun ja, ihre Zunge einrollen, das Babyface die Landschaft vom Boden saugen wie, sagen wir, eine Milchhaut oder eine Puddinghaut. Sie mit Kilometerpfählen, kleinen Gehöften vom Straßenrand, Scheunen mit darin Tieren, Ausfahrtsschilder und Beine, die ins Leere rudern, in den Mund stopfen, sie mit Kinderhänden spielend vom Boden lesen, Dächer abdecken, mit klebrigen Fingern weidende Kühe am Nacken in die Luft ziehen, rudernde leere Beine in die Tüte, kurz in den Mund geschoben, um später im Umkreis den Krempel kilometerweit verstreut liegen zu lassen. Wie Susanna ihre Sachen. Ach, scheiße.
The last painted poem of the season. All directions over the globe flow onto the GPS navigator, led by the female voice from the speakers, in the speakers, the ears of the driver in the poet boxes, where their dainty voices live with feelers and pincers, gently, with tender thrusts, hitting the ossicles until it froths up out of the ears. Love, in the thumbs and fingers of the hand, oddly tingling on the handlebar, which stop the cars along the country road, which let the godly fingers glide over the map. The hands have smoothed out the street. An unrolled tongue in front of the car on which laughing flowers and trees in brilliant sunshine, trees which masticate dragons in their mouths, like with Charlie Brown high above, in the rear view, the sun as Pumpkinhead, still quite friendly. Thinking about the voice on the tongue of the announcement of the female speaker in the studio with vibrato, as if she were dubbing a porno, while across the windshield, trees suggest landscape. So rhyme yourself, like something of early summer, the drive through Brandenburg, while someone American, Twister, someone quite clearly on the tongue of the country road, Twister, the collar of wind turned up. It begins to destroy tree buds and taste buds on the mouth hole floor. Look upwards to the roof of the mouth, a flock of birds with millions of wing beats. In the infinity scarf of the wind, still a beautiful summer's day, sketched by hand with the peepity-peep, deep, peep, 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 peep of the compass rose. The collar of wind turned up. He shades the surface light green, the anonymous artist. Over the country road he rubs the graphite from the mine on the ground with his thumb, the pencil between his lips, tipped against his tongue, with tongue pressed against the gums, arranging themselves beneath the thunderheads, conglomerating into the baby face of a supercell encountering a cloud street. A light breeze nudging the pointer further and further up the Beaufort scale. The sound growing, possibly light or possibly heavy snowdrift, beneath the painter's eyes, possibly hail, hail, hail. On the weather map, the inner one, where the finger of God's creation departs and smears homes like drops of dye, a hard stop, as if the landscape were to, well, yeah, roll up its tongue, and the baby face were to suck up the floor, as we say, like a milk skin or a pudding skin. They cram kilometer markers, tiny granges by the roadside, barns with animals inside with exit signs, and legs paddling in the emptiness into their mouths. They read with child hands playing from the floor, cover roofs, yank grazing cows into the air by the nape with sticky fingers, paddling, empty legs in the bag, shortly shoved into mouth, in order to leave the junk, later distributed for kilometers around, like Susanna, her things. Shit.
Schraubenschlüssel. Ist das Musik, was aus dem Vogelküstchen kommt? Ist das eine Goebbels? Schnauze, dreh mal lauter, ob was aus den Sängerkriegen kommt? Durchs Loch der Schatten auf der Mauer, ob's ein Fünf ist oder der Vogel, Propellerdüsen, Instrumente.
Screwdriver. Is music coming from the bird box? Is that a Goebbels radio? Turn it up. If something comes out of the German minstrel wars, through the shadow's hole on top of the wall, whether it's a D- or the bird con trails tools.
So I will read one in German only.
Okay, yeah.
Sonanz. Die Funktion der Wellen zwischen den Blöcken im Sand, ein Festlandknebel, rote Grenze gezogen mit dem Zollstock, korrodiert. Die Lippen, dumpf aufeinander gepresst, reiben History, aus Boxen Hysterie. Noch Touristen sagen Beach, Störung konkurrierender Sender, Vibration im Bereich der Teilchen oder Tunnelgräber, Helme, auf, als würde angetreten gegen den Beton, den Winde verhören, Brandungen quälen. Blechzungen-Equipment ohne Marke, schon gekrümmte Winkelkreuze, Stars and Stripes, die nach Wahrheit hinter Dünen stehen. Achsen, ach so. Ersoffene Mündungen, Langwelle, Sprachrohre, Ahnungslosigkeit. Schuhgrößen. Oh, wem der Schuh, den lässt er nimmer los, der mit seinen Zehen fest die Sohle passt. Immerzu kommt Schuh dazu. Hu. Eine Frage der Größe. Ein Heer darin schreitet, die Zehen gespreizt, bunter Lack. Schuhverkäufer, was sei dein Lieblingsfetisch? Ein Schuh, so Fuß wie schön, so heute. So einen musst du lassen auf der Zunge laufen. Ja, lass ihn zwischen deinen Lippen, den Gaumen und die Zunge spüren, Es soll Schuh den Fuß, den Lippen schlüpfen. So einer muss in Schuhkartonkopf mit. Ist etwa Denken ein Schuh? An dessen kitzelnder Stelle ein Knöchel aufblickt zwischen schlanken Lederbändern? Ich habe solche Füße, ja, gesehen, stets unterm Blickfeld weg unterwegs in ihrem Schuh aufs Filmende zu. Am Grunde des Schuhs waren sie verschluckt, doch hielten sie in jenen Fällen ihr Niveau. So habe auch ich immer mich, diese Schuhe, die Landschaft meines Denkens abgetreten, jeweils mich verlassen auf Einheitsgrößen.
I'm not going to sing it. Shoe sizes. Oh, to whom the shoe, which he never lets go, which tightly fits the sole with his toes, incessantly reoccurring shoe. Who? A question of size. Stepping along inside, the toes spread, colorful lacquer. Shoe seller, what's your favorite fetish? A shoe, so foot as beautiful, so today. Who? Such a shoe you must let run on your tongue. Yes, let it in between your lips. Who? Let your gums and tongues feel. Who? Shoe should slide from foot to lips. Then one must dive into the shoebox head first. Is thinking perhaps a shoe? Who? On whose titillating spot an ankle glances upward between thin leather straps? I have truly seen such feet. Always below my line of sight, missing, on the go, closed up in their shoes at film's end. At the base of the shoe, they were swallowed up, yet they kept their level in those times. So have these shoes, as well as I myself, wiped clean the landscape of my mind, abandoning me, respectively, to universal sizes. Who? who, 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 who. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Adam. So for the next segment, somewhat long work that's published here, my new book, Near Miss. And actually the title of the book, Near Miss, has a lot to do with this poem. I wrote a poem, must have been around 1980, called You, Y-O-U. And in our collaborative translations, Norbert translated it. And then I said, let's, kind of proceed with the concept of the poetics of translation and transcreation. And why don't I translate, transform, respond to your translation? And we kept doing this back and forth for quite a long time. You have to also understand that I don't speak German, so I'm responding to the poems without actually being able to understand them at some level. And the conventional level, too, would be the level I don't understand them at. What do you mean by understanding? The poem is called Apoplexy, spelled in a different way. But near miss is sort of what it is. Each version is a kind of near miss, close to but different than the one before. When the University of Chicago Press has two readers, because it's an academic press, and my books are treated within that series, and one of the readers said something that was delightful to me. He said, really, you should have translations of Lange's poems in addition to what we did. But it was a good idea, but not really good for our book. But you'll see why, because there's an aspect. So they will just remain untranslated. So we will read it. Apoplexy.
Apoplexy.
You. Time wounds all heals, spills through with echoes neither idea nor lair can jam. The door of your unfolding starts like intervening vacuum, lush refer to accidents of chance, of lachrymose fixation made mercurial as the tores in crevice lock, dried up like river made the rhymes, to know what ocean were unkempt, or hides detain the wean of, hides felicity depend.
Du man sie. Zeit schlägt alles Wunden, durchspült die Echos nicht echt, noch Ironie wecken. Die Tür auf einen Spalt entfaltet, fährt ein Vakuum dazwischen, so oft ein Wink oder Wank des Glückes, fix gesetzte Larmoyanz, was unstet eben reisend neue Spalten setzt, als würden Flüsse trocken werden, wie Reime gern wüssten, welche See so verwildert vielmehr auf den Versen abhängt, so was Verse wären.
As rivers would be dry as rhymes. Time bleeds all wounds, flushed echoes still not real. Irony awakens, unfolding the door, a gap drives a vacuum in between, often a hint of helplessness, fixed, wet, erratically just ravening sets, new concatenations, concentrations, as rivers would be dry as rhymes, like to know which lake is wild, depends rather on the version of what verse would be.
Wo Flüsse wie Strophen trocken liegen. Jede Schrunde schröpft die Zeit, sie scheuchte nach wie vor unechte Echos. Der Witz der Sache weckt, wach entfaltet diese Tür einen Spalt, eine Leere im Zwischenreich, oft Zeichen heilloser Hilflosigkeit, verbessert, verwässert. Fairlässig gierig bloß auf frische Konkatentationen, Konzertrationen, wo Flüsse wie Strophen trocken liegen, als ginge den der Fluss reißt, wohl klärten, dächten sollten, welches welcher Vers nun einmal wollte.
Where quivers such verse as sky, each fissure fleeces time, shewing still spurious echoes. Joke of the matter wades, this door unfolds, a gap, a void in limbo, which craters helplessness, dilated to song, or just greedy for fresh collation, wound ration, where silver slips don't ply, as wood who rips a reeve, well clarified, should think that now once wanted, wails.
Wo zittern solche Himmel spielen. Stilles Huschen fadenscheiniger Töne, Macht, Echos hinters Licht geführte Beine, Witzen in der Sache, strampeln. Die Tür klappt auf, klafft, eine Limbo-Leere, diese Krater, weiter, Unbeholfenheit, Hänger in einem Lied. Doch plärt Gier hier nach Streckung, Fresspakete, wo kein Silberstreif schlüpft, als würde die Distanz nun Kläffer, tja, zu klären wäre Bedenken, was eben aufs Haben klagte.
Where tremors play at sky, still scurrying after, or is it aloft, spurious tones? Fake echoes are better than no echoes, don't they say? As if my trick leg was joking with me. I mean, all that kicking had to stop one way or another. The jaw drops. Is that the first sign of agape? A limitless sense of limits as on a roll you fail to fail? And in those moments awkwardness trails being, or is it put off just for the time it takes to wake to it? Where there's no silver lining dwells the ship of incontinent distance and reified indelicacy, such that I dance around my doubts as they clarify themselves in the nonce.
Am Himmel, wo sich das Zittern tummelt. Noch huschen hoch oder etwa nach die Störtöne. Unechte Echos besser als rein ohne Echo oder so ähnlich. Es stellte mir mein Trickbein ein Bein. Ich mein, all das Gekicke musste doch mal stillstehen, etwa nicht? Der Kiefer klappt herunter und das bedeutet Agape. Ein Sinn entschließt sich schließlich als Koller auf der Rampe und eben hinterlässt die Schrägheit Spuren auf der Strecke oder wäre auf die wache Uhr gestellt, genau, geweckt. Wo kein Silberstreif vermutet wird, darüber kurft ein Schiff undichter Kontinente und versachlichter Nachlässigkeit, als dribbelte ich zwischen meinen Grübeleien, während sie zusammen ein Geschäft abwickeln.
Hindrance of splattering tumult. No hush falls sullen as the hush of scorn, eking out baser odors, silencing chaos, all sterile that mauls the still mime of a gap, woe echoing bedecked gazelles sprung from knots, like the mine shaft of love's stroke, peering, whacked, swished, lick, whisked. Mine sin, essentially, ramped to rain on a collared trick mired in stealth. Where there is no silver lining, there is a curving ship, leaking continents and objectified negligence, dribbling between my musings, jaw dropped.
Rebound des stotternden Tohuwabohus. Kein Psst fällt düsterer aus als der Verachtung. Psst. Üblere Gerüche streckt, so schweigt das Chaos. Wie alles folgt der starren Pantomime einer defekten Lücke. Wie Echolot beflaggter Sprunggazellen. Vom Knoten im Claim des Geistes Sätze, verliebt in Apoplexie. Der schielt, scheppt, saust, ein Loch, Quirl der Wellen im Bergwerk der Sünder, überkommen von einer Hierarchie des Schwindels an der Leine, versumpftes Mogeln, Ohne silberne Laken dreht den Kiel ein Urlaubsdampfer. Leckgeschlagen, Kontinente und lässiges Verhalten, mein Traumdribbling, mein Kiefer, tiefer zu den Kniekehlen.
Stuttering tomahawks sound America. I'm pissed, which is even gloomier than contempt and smells far fouler in this silken tent. How it all follows the rigid pantomime of defective gaps, woe's depth sound like Jezebels jumping between apps, all the while claiming mental dispersion, in love with apoplexy, the squints, the schnapps, the holes that pleat, the vexing. In the mind, the sinners decry hierarchy, fraud on a leash, while in the open air, mirrors might as well be cheats.
Tomahawks stottern Amerikas Sound. Da wären Tricks zwischendrin, behauptet die Verachtung. Pranger einbrechender Tiefe, Dispersion ohnehin weit folgt Vogelfänger, Betrugslücken eingetrübt wie Hierarchie Löcher. Ich bin in ist es Isabels Sprungleine. Wie geistiges Vermögen lieben Miene Spiegel beschlagen, bei klarer Pantomime stinksauer Faltestarren. Schnaps, seidener schwere Nöter, schnieft, Klänge schielt, zählt, als das Leidige, genauso gut die, während beim Weh, eine Luft, die alle all und Apoplexy ab.
On a clear day, you can see the air as a transparent mist separates us from all we love and everything we care about. And still, a smooth, fine luminescence overwhelms me with an atmosphere of almost, well, being. There were tricks in between that smelled just like teen fever. Pillars humping death, or maybe that's just the way it looked from up here. Dispersion, anyway, is a safer bet than consolidation, which will only take you so far before foul clouds judge your judgment, and fear fingers the gaps in its place. Such a hierarchy of holes. Am I jumping the chain link fence of my own heartlessness? We love intellectual property so long as it doesn't cost us anything. Mind fogged, what's new? A mirror of the pantomime I gave you for Christmas. Like the thes, or an ands, or the ands in the, and then the just quits after you left it out in the passing storm.
An klaren Tagen siehst du die Gestirne so deutlich wie das eherne Gesetz in dir, welches besagt, urteile so, dass dein Sehen allgemeines Gesetz werde. Es gibt kein richtiges Können im Fälschen. Dazwischen Taschenspielertricks, Geruch genau, nach einer großen Fete. Gebeugt auf den Tod, Stelzen. Möglicherweise wirkt es nur noch so wie von hier oben herab. Verstreutes, sei's drum, ein sicherer Gewinn als Trost, der Spieler nur so weit trägt, bis Ulke kritisch ihre Urteilskraft vernebeln. Wo Angstkitzel statt ihrer selbst die Lücken stopft. Diese Rangliste von oben, das bin ich. Etwas, das springt an der Leine, Regungen im Nerz dominant. Wir lieben geistigen Vollbesitz, solange, bis er in unsere Taschen greift. Benebelt im Einvernehmen. Gibt's Neuigkeiten? Eine Pantomime im Handspiegel, dem letzten Festgeschenk, wie es die es oder ein in eins, in eine oder an ein dem, die in eines und dann dem es gerade eben boomte.
A bright, clear morning softens the wrath of God. Dazed by Trick's touch, playing spanking against spoke, natch, a goner fets on bewildered grub, ogling wise, but working the we all the same, here as well as she. You betcha. He's done. A slicker one's toast to the big spiel you make of it, ultra-critical, a kind of verbatim ukulele angst, static set for your lucky spot. Jeez. Rage into your beer, bitch. It was spring and there I lain, ragamuffin in reverse, dominant. You betcha. Slinging that folk business, usury torching grief, belting bennies in an envelope of annoyance. I'm pantomime with a handspring, felt festering with dye. Dye is the order of the one in an odor of an order. Them dyes in the eyes, damn them. Them grates the blooms.
Morgenklare Bucht lockert Zorn und Sorgen Gottes. Trickst das Tuch, pling, bitte in die Maske. Ein Bein ist ein wenig kurz, versohl den Hosenboden wohl, ne? Gröpatz, Fatzke der Widernis, du Furz, denkbarerweise. Geht so gut, er gibt was her, setzen wir. Schlüpft an diesem Tag ein Fohlen, das du dir stricktest, das überkritische Kind. Unterm Strich streck alle Viere, wo Johnny wetten wir? Ob das volle Volk den ganzen Knaster trinkt? Ob Sünden irgendwo an der Tapete hängen? Heißt Verwandtschaft. Das paar Zeichen dem zu's Klären helfen. Gelb vor Neid. Weißt du, wen der Ball fängt? Sahst du, den die Augenwürfel rollen? Shit, alles für Gold. Den brocktest du dir ein. Ach, nein.
Mordant glare, the gash in a gutless swarm. Never pretend otherwise. It's a trick, got it? The mask of unbecoming has become ever so cunning. Please, bite your tongue if you want to spook the language, or curtsy when your bladder is filled with blood. Fuck, don't even know how it got there, does you? I'm bursting with vitriol from wisdom or wilding. I'm uncertain which. Not to fuss, but sure, thanks a mill for the vinyl blouse. A fluke for a waist is wasted on a boy like you, if you don't mind the exasperation. I got so many goddamn gripes, my gut's stuffed with gimlets from last night's gin rum. Where does it say that? Sometimes I think you can almost understand, but I'm a schlump, that's a German word, isn't it? Of fortune, plied for life to days that tag me with lies I never quite got right, folded in half like a neat napkin after supper. That's bittersweet, like the way she's killing me softly with her unkindliness, and how I wouldn't be able to live without it. Upteen strikes streak like comets off the rim of my glass of Beaujolais. The way you lay, wet and unseen, a strain of folk music after the folks are gone. But that's enough about me. I thought the talk was to be poetry. A poem's a wizened shaft of yellowed disconsolence that pricks like sin, making runic tattoos on the mind's skin with pocked fangs and sashes to die for. We're on a roll, but not for gold. It's that old swamp song. You never believed it, no matter how often I failed to tell you. Make mine a double, one more time, then call it a night.
Beize, Blitze, Spalten, Schnuppenknall. Stell dich nie wie, sonst ist ein Trick. Verstehst du? Die Maske sieht so unfisch aus, das wirkt schon wieder ausgefuchst. Beiß dir auf die Uhr, wenn du willst, die Sprache bekäme einen Schreck. Knicke hier etwas, wenn die Blase blutig ist. Mist, weiß nicht, wie es dazu kam, du vielleicht. Es gluckert in mir Weisheit oder Vitriol. Klar, keine Ahnung, was davon. Doch bestimmt, ich stech dir den Freizeitblues Glück auf der Hüfte eines Jungen wie dir vergossen, wenn nicht verzweifelt was stört. Ich hab so viel gottverdammtes Bauchgrimmen, das füllt sich allmählich an, als strampelten ein paar Besoffene mit mehreren Gimlets zu viel um ihr Leben im Gin der Lieferung von gestern Nacht. Steht das geschrieben? Glaub, dass du verstehst, doch ich bin ein Schlump. Das ist Deutsch, korrekt? Des Glücksrats verzwirnter Tage, das zwickt mich fadenscheinig Lügen. Ich kaufe sowas nicht. Ab, ich falte, immer falsch in der Mitte, ein netter Schläfer nach dem Happen. Hafersüß, so tötet sie mich, so wie mit ihrer Unfreundlichkeit, und da ich ohne dies nie fähig wäre, von sowas zu leben. Zigfach streifen Streiks sich kometengleich von der Felge meines Glases Beaujolais, wie wohl du im Grase lagst, nass und nie gesehen. Doch jetzt genug von mir. Ich dachte nur, wir wollten Poesie reden. Ein Gedicht ist ein abgenagter Griebsch gelber Untröstlichkeit. Das sticht wie Hölle, brennt einem Tattoos runisch in den Skin des Geistes, mit lockeren Reißzähnen, Sternhagel voll und einem Rasen zum Sterben, so trollen wir uns. Doch nicht für Geld. Es ist die alte, sinkende Leier, auf die du nie hörtest, ganz gleich, wie oft ich es dir nicht sagte. Mach einen Doppelten draus. Dann nochmal. Dann lass es dabei bleiben. Dann aber Schluss. Okay, we have...
Somehow in doing that, I learned German, because now it's as clear as yes, exactly. So what do you want to do, Norbert? We have maybe 10 minutes. You can read a poem just in German, or I have the translations of
two poems.
Catherine Hales.
Yeah, Catherine Hales was a poet from England, but now, as you know, the Brexit is coming. She just became a German citizen. And she's a great translator.
Can we
poet.
become German citizens too?
Well,
I'm ready
I'd
to
be
go
glad
back
to.
now.
I'd be
I've had enough of America. It's just a joke. And not a very good, not a very dark joke, but
yesterday-
still.
You know, Charles, yesterday when I went through Philadelphia, I tried to get the Wi-Fi on, and then I had it. FBI surveillance van. So, okay, this poem is called Flügelschuh. It's about poetry and about running.
You want? Let's try it where we do it stanza for stanza, just
Yeah,
to
okay.
give you a little closer sense of the German. Because we're hoping, one of my ideas I sent to my undergraduate class is we're thinking through these kind of readings like a kind of a Rosetta thing, that you listen to a few of these and then you're able to read German and speak it. Really, just 3 or 4 bilingual readings, and you're going to be ready to go right to Berlin, to Cologne. It's true, we keep competing with you, but it's a different style of the German we'd be learning. So you start in the German, and I'll read the English stanza for stanza.
Okay.
So Wingshoe.
Flügelschuh. Die Zunge gleitet es herunter und schlängelt eine Weile dort, um unter Geräuschen an der Ferse vorbei unter die Fußsohle zu rutschen, ins Ungewisse, Dunkle, sonst nur getreten und
The tongue slides down it and lingers serpentine a while before slipping noisily past the heel below the sole of the foot into uncertainty. Dark place, usually just trodden on. And
dort Funken zu machen, kriecht sie weiter in den vorderen Schuh, die Zehen weiter zum Spielen und zieht zurück, knisternd durch die Zehen in den Fuß, durch ihn, seine Wurzel und
creating sparks there, it creeps on as the shoe's front where it carries on playing around the toes, then draws back, crackling through the toes into the foot, through its tarsus and
Und Ballen, Sohle und Riss zugleich entlang, wie Strom, zieht aus dem Vorfuß über die Sesambeine, angemacht zurück zum Spann, dort von neuem zu beginnen. So geht es mit den Füßen zu und
simultaneously a long ball, sole and instep like a current, drawing back from the foot's front, through the sesamoids, switched on, back to the instep pole, where it starts again from the beginning, so much for the feet, and
Und manche Schuhe ziehst du an, aus andere, anschmiegsamere Orte richtet deine Zunge zu, worauf, nach etwas Warten, zögerlich, dann sprudeln Speichelfluss, gleicht der Schuh einem Mund und
some shoes you slip into, out of others, your tongue making snugger places fit, whereupon, after a short wait, hesitantly, then gushing, a flood of saliva, the shoe is like a mouth, and
und der leichte Schnalzlaut, den Fuß in geläufigem Schuh gesprochen, so folgt dem Denken ein Ton, erst schleppend, bei jedem Schritt schließlich von Schmatzen begleitet und
the light tongue click, the foot spoken into ordinary shoe. Thus the thought is followed by a tone, slow moving at first, each step accompanied by a smacking of lips, and
so will der Schuh wohl auch Harmonie, denn ihn gewogen und wörtlich genommen, ein Ohr, das bis zur Schuhspitze dem schlürfenden Gang der Sätze folgt, ist er wohl auch und
what the shoe really desires is harmony, for it's weighed and taken literally. What it really is an ear following the slurping trail of the sentences right on the tip of the shoe, and
und Füße, die diesen Weg wohl täglich nehmen, können im Spiegel des Schuhs, dank ihm, worin ihr Wesen liegt, erkennen und hören zugleich, wie sie im Gehen sprechen und
feet that walk this way every day may in the shoe's mirror, thanks to it, recognize wherein its essence lies, and at the same time hear what they're speaking while walking, and
und beide so tönend. Geht auch jeder Schritt nahtlos über in den anderen, die von ihnen getretenen Worte kapierst du kaum. Mit denkenden Füßen in Einklang steht man nämlich selten und
both so resonantly, however seamlessly, each step slides into the next. You will hardly understand the words they tread on, for one is seldom in step with thinking feet, and
und hinkst du hinterher wie scheppernden Füßen, statt die Luft mit Flügeln flirrenden Gesanges plump den Boden zu treten, von dem sich die Schuhe beschwingt entfernen und
if you're hobbling along behind on feet that rattle and clank, crudely pounding, instead of the air with wings of quivering song, the ground, the shoes are elatedly vanishing from, and, like the feet, feeling their limitation here.
und wie die Füße hier ihr Limit spüren.
This is just the German?
This is just
So we'll do this.
yeah.
So let's read this one. Why don't I read this first in English? And then you take it from there. So two more. And this one, translated again by Catherine Hales, is called On Building the Lear, although I never know how to pronounce that word. L-Y-R-E. It's always kind of like liar, isn't it? Lear, liar. On Building the Lear. In the hands of the singer Amphion, Sounds resounded, which had never been heard before, each of which hit the notes impeccably, and the walls of Thebes rose magically up, stone by stone, to Anthion's music. They came to the singer from every rift in the world, an algorithm forced into the dog-like form of a fortress. Agents, hangers-on, red tape, the bones of those who died in the building work were used for it. A warship gets into debt, but a wall makes a profit. Connection between mining industry and leadership of men, looked at like the cybernetics, a new Great Wall of China. What the poet did not know about and could not say, where the sing-song of his statesmanship was leading, just copying a few things. That's how victories are declared. The rest are mortar, sweat, blood, brain. Anyway, the language is really good. Laugh prospectors childishly. When the music changes, the city walls tremble so firmly that you can feel it in your belly, depending on the tempo. That's how we win, regain ground, the wise old Chinese man says.
Beim Bau der Leier. Beim Bau der Leier. Unter den Händen des Sängers Amphion ertönten Klänge, die wir noch nie gehört, von denen jeder makellos die Note traf, und die Mauern Thebens wuchsen magisch hinauf, Stein um Stein zu Amphions Musik. Sie sind zum Sänger gekommen, aus allen Spalten der Welt, ein Algorithmus gezwungen in die hündische Form einer Wehranlage. Agenten, Mitläufer, Amtsschimmel, wurden die Knochen derer dort eingesetzt, die beim Bauvorhaben starben. Ein Kriegsschiff macht Schulden, eine Mauer dagegen Profit. Verbindung zwischen Montanindustrie und Menschenführung, Kybernetik, so eine neue Art chinesische Mauer, wovon der Dichter nicht wissen konnte, nicht zu sagen wusste, wohin der Singsang seiner Staatskunst führte. Nur ein paar Dinge kopieren, so werden Siege erklärt. Der Rest sind Mörtel, Schweiß, Blut, Hirn. In jedem Fall ist die Sprache wirklich gut. Lachen kindisch, Prospektoren. Wenn die Musik sich ändert, zittern die Stadtmauern so feste, dass du es in deinem Bauch spüren kannst. Je nach Takt gewinnen wir so, machen wieder Boden. Sagt der weise alte Chinese. And the last poem is actually a translation or an attempt at translation of a poem which I like very much. A friend and I, Matthias, you know, Matthias Traxler, a poet from Berlin. We've been thinking and talking and translating and shifting on this poem a lot. And you probably know this poem. It's called Often I'm Permitted to Return to a Meadow by Robert Duncan. And I tried to translate it using different translations of Dante's Convivio into German. So it begins with a motto from the Convivio, which I sadly cannot translate to you. Wenn also mangelhaft die Reime sind, die ihren Lobpreis künden, so gibt die Schuld dem schwachen Geist und unserer kleinen Redekraft, die Amos Worte nicht kann wiedergeben. Dante, Convivio. Eine Wiese bewegt mich oft mit ihren Dingen, die der Spender alles guten Denkens ist. Weit geht sie über unser Denken, wie auch die hohe Kraft, die sie besitzt, viel größer ist als unsere eigene. Liebe, die mir im Geiste redet, dass der Verstand sich ganz verwirret, wie vor dem Sonnenstrahl das Auge weicht. Und was sie spricht, das klingt so lieblich, dass meine Seele, die es hört und fühlt, was mein Verstand nicht kann begreifen, der Himmel ist es, den, holde Wesen, ihr in jenen Zustand führt, den ich jetzt fühle. Liebe, die mir im Geiste redet. Es sieht die Sonne, die die Welt umkreiset, so hold es nun in jener Stunde, da ihre Strahlen auf der Herrin leuchten, der sie erschaffen einst, sieht sie so gerne, dass immer neu er seine Kraft ihr leiht. Und irrst du dich, so wirst du schauen an ihr so hoher Wunderpracht, weil sie erdachte der Beweger aller Welten, die Amor mich Lobpreisen heißt, deren Ursprung Reichtum sei. Thank you.
take really a very short break. If you want to stay up, those who don't wish to stay, do 1/2 hour more. And an interview in this case, so this is a good time, right, to stand up or to. That was great. Wonderful. Beautiful. It's really.
Yes.
Welcome to Close Listening, Penn Sound's program of conversations with poets. Today my guest is Norbert Lange, and we are recording the show following his reading at the Kelly Writers House, which you can listen to on Penn Sound. Norbert Lange was born in Poland in 1978. He came to Germany with his parents in 1981, growing up in the Rhineland, and since 2008, Lange has lived in Berlin. He is the founder he is a founding member of the Lyric Knapschaft. Lyric Knapschaft. Is that the right way to pronounce that?
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's a
I like it, though. Lyric Knapschaft. See, we don't have such big, long words in English. Schoenberg, and was the editor of the trilingual literary magazine Radar. In 2009 and 2010, he led the Poetry Chat in Multipoetry, a European project for collectively writing poems. He and the poet Léonce Lupet edit the magazine Karawa.net. So far, he's published 2 books of poetry and a collection of essays, as well as bilingual selections of British and North American poets, among them Alan Fisher, Charles Olson, George Oppen, Jerome Rothenberg, and me. I go by Carl Bernstein.
Hallo?
Norbert, welcome to Close Listening.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Carl. Welcome as well.
Willkommen.
Welcome.
So, what's this thing about sound? I mean, I was a little distracted in your reading with all the sound effects and noise and so on. Why don't you just say what you mean?
Because, no. Probably, no.
That's always a good answer.
No,
just get ready
no.
for it.
No. Well, you know, I like sounds. It's wonderful. Putting them sound first, meaning second.
And in this sense, you mentioned Schwitters. How do you see Schwitters within your work? I mean, of course, it's the Sonata, the great and principal sound poem that you're referencing there, with even quoting it. But your own work really never quite goes into what you could call sound poetry. It's actually quite complex in terms of the lexical meanings and the images and the rhetorical tropes and trips. So how do you see this relationship between the almost pure sound divorced from lexical meaning and the Schwitters and what you're doing?
Well, I don't regard myself as in any way avant-garde like Schwitters was in his time. I think all these techniques, all avant-garde, that should be mainstream. So I'm trying to do that how I can. And Schwitters is probably one important figure, what we call in Germany perhaps, or I call a Säulenheiliger. So a really important figure, like I don't know, a saint perhaps?
A secular saint.
It's really a saint. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So we should all worship guys like Schwitters. It's better than, there are other people who can be worshipped but shouldn't.
Well, let me back up then a second and ask how you see your work fitting in with the context in German poetry. As you know, and we've often talked about, there's not as much knowledge of German poetry, both of the generation older than me, my generation, and your generation. So can you talk about how you see your relationship to other German poets or to the German poetry that resonates with you?
Well, there are of course friends who are poets and with whom I'm in constant exchange, like Matthias, which I mentioned earlier, Matthias Traxler, which is a very dear friend and very interesting poet. And we are working together. We were working together on the translations we did of your poems, the Angriff der schwierigen Gedichte, with Léonce Lupet and Tobias Anslinger. And those are probably the closest of my from my contemporaries. There are a few other friends and who are poets, And if you go back from then, I'd say there's this poet Thomas Kling, which was very important to me at the beginning when I started to write. To really try to write poetry, that was a figure which was very important because he was so difficult for me at the beginning when I started reading him, and I always get attached to poets who are difficult to understand for me. So I may skip them and put them aside, but I get back to that, and I try to get a hold of the poets then. And then, of course, if you go back to now no longer living poets, then there's, of course, the guys from Vienna, Konrad Bayer, and not so much Gerhard Rühm, but he's alive yet. Yeah. Heisenbüttel, all those.
Helmut Heisenbüttel.
Helmut Heisenbüttel, Dieter Roth was very important.
The Vienna Circle, Jandl.
Jandl, yeah. And then, of course, you get to the Dadaists, which for me are the true avant-garde of the 20th century. They are the only guys who rejected all this arts business, except for Tristan Tzara, of course. I'm more to Hugo Ball, who was probably not that known in America. I don't know.
No, Karawani is, everybody knows
Yeah.
that in high school. We all
Yeah, so-
learn that and chant that together.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Ugo Ball. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's good. You should at least try to do that. Yeah, that's the guys. But it's probably 10 years now that my major interest in poetry is English-speaking poetry, American poets and British poets. So I'm not the best institution to ask for German poetry, I guess.
Yeah, okay, but I'm glad I asked anyway. But now I will switch. What is this thing with English language poetry?
Well,
What do you find there that particularly attracted you? And I ask you to speak about the specific poets you translate too, because there's a lot of interest, I think, in those poets here and for me. But what first sort of got you interested in American poetry? Not necessarily what you translated. What did you find there that got you wanting to translate it, as opposed to just read it? Did you think you're bringing something into German and contemporary German poetry that isn't there? Because once again, there isn't as much translation into German as we have with, for example, French exchanges.
Well, that's probably there are two answers, I guess. First, just the simple thing, trying to get a view on the poetry from abroad. And when I started to read poetry and to get nerdy with poetry, to look everywhere, I found Ezra Pound, which was obvious at the beginning, I guess, because he's
And
very
associated with our university here, one of our very important pen poets, Ezra
Yeah.
Pound.
yeah. Well, that was a beginning, but then, of course, after a while, I started getting interested in translating, and when I started to translate a bit, I also started reading more and more poets, and one poet leads to another. I don't know if, for example, when I guess this must have been 10 years ago, and I read Jerry Rothenberg, and in his book, what's it called? An early book with essays.
Well, prefaces.
Yeah, that. And then, of course, there are a couple of other names.
Right.
Then I read selected poems of Louis Zukovsky, which you edited, and then, of course, your name was on my paper as well. So it's spread like a kindly and Nice disease.
Are the poets that you're talking about nice? He said a nice disease.
Yes, yes.
That was good. That's what I thought. We need a little dis-ease in America. So.
Yeah.
Were these poets known or translated very much, the people that you have translated?
No, no. I mean, Oppen is still totally or almost totally unknown. We had the first complete cantos by Pound a couple of years ago, and there was an afterword by this guy you know at Ikstadt, a professor
Right,
from Berlin, and he wrote about Oppen in this afterword of the association of the objectivist press and Pound and the objectivists and Pound. But when I look into literary into Literaturwissenschaften. Yeah, some critical literature, for example, from the 80s or 90s, whenever there's someone mentioned like George Oppen or Zukowski, not so much, or Charles Olsen, they are always mentioned as, yeah, and then there were those guys who imitated and derived from Pound, which is totally ridiculous if you think about it. So no, they were not widely translated. There was, of course, a connection to Germany which Olsen had through Rainer Maria Gerhardt and Robert Creeley, but there were not much translations.
I mean, it may be impossible to answer, and of course we were together in Berlin. At least I was at the conference. You weren't, but I talked to you about it. Why do you think that is, that there's been a kind of a greater absence of mutual exchange, as opposed to, for example, France has a longer history of that too. Is there something about the sensibility of post-war German poets that sort of pulled away from the new American poetry? What we would call the group you're talking about, and the objectivists?
I don't think so, no. I think one thing could be that everyone who learns English thinks he knows English.
That we have that problem here too.
I can't speak for your problem here, but
I always fall for that myself and realize that that's not. I know only a very little bit of English.
But that's good. That's a good starting point. But not for publishing poets from another country, and that's probably the second possible answer to say that. There's so much potential to translate. They almost directly go to the prose authors, and not to the poets. And when you're thinking of poetry, then they are mostly translating South and Southeast and Eastern European poets. So that one possible answer could be that the infrastructure for publishing, the funding for translations mostly goes to countries which are not so big like America, the United States. Yeah.
Can you talk maybe a little bit about, for example, Oppen, translating that and issues that came up and how you thought about it? Or perhaps, I just looked at your translation of Come, Shadow, Come. That was a fascinating rethinking of the line from Shakespeare, come shadow come and make this shadow, which he takes and does every permutation on. And then you carry on. What are you doing in these kinds of serial multiple translations like that? I'll go back to Oppen after that.
Yeah. Well, you know, there were difficulties getting the permission to translate Zukowski into German. And one idea to find a loophole was to not translate the poem, but use the method to create new poems. And then I got a couple of permutations from different lines out of German literary history, often Andreas Gryphius. And then I had the idea, well, if you start this, why not start to translate the method into another medium, like into a visual thing. So yeah, but it's a total different aspect than translating Oppen, which I was überfordert with that, overwhelmed by it, which is, it was difficult to translate him, but that was the point of translating him. Yeah.
How about the multiple and serial and translations that you're doing, or maybe talk about Carrara.net? What were you doing with that website in terms of translation and opening up the space for translation there?
This was, well, as the title, the address says, a caravane, and that's the poem by Hugo Ball, obviously, but the idea of trying to connect internationally and to look for the avant-garde or the interesting things and to get in touch with people. Yeah. So that's how we met.
That's true.
And how our translation project began, and how some other projects started as well there. And yeah, it was the idea was to have no money for that and to exploit ourselves, to do as much without getting any money. That was, for me, it was the point. For others, it was not, and so we had quite some quarrels, and people left the project because of the quarrels, and others just didn't have any more time because they were starting to get into work and all those things. Yeah.
Can you talk about the context of Germany or possibly Poland in the way that it relates to your work? It's a very kind of standard question I could ask in a different way, but I'll leave it open to me. People would always ask about
actually,
American aspect,
Yeah.
but
I see, yeah. Really?
for you, this is an unfamiliar question?
No, I'm not hearing it much because, Lange doesn't sound very Polish. So it was.
Sounds Polish to me.
That's nice, but it was Langowski. Langowski was my name when I came from Poland to Germany, and before that, my grandfather he was called Lange. Yeah. So
And they spoke Polish?
no, they spoke German and Polish.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was my grandmother, from the mother of my father, she was Polish. My grandfather, the father of my father. That's so complicated sometimes. He was German, and it's a normal Middle European mix. So the other half was Polish and French. So I'm European.
But are there specific aspects
Yeah.
to your Polish
Yes, there
ness
are.
that
I guess.
strike you?
Well, growing up bilingually, not speaking Polish, I didn't want to. It was kind of over assimilation in Germany, but I always had both languages in my ear. So if someone, I remember as a child, 2 years or 3 years, when the word Japan came up, then I thought, ja, that's me in Polish, and pan, that's Mr. I am the guy. I'm the man. Yeah, and so these false friends and all the stuff that was quite early there, and only later I realized that some queer sentence building I do. So the verb is at a different place than it should be or is used to. You can sing a word of it. That's probably from Polish, because the verb is there in another position in the sentence than in the German, And I like that.
Well, I'll move on to Germany then in this context. Growing up in the post-war German world and the politics and the cultural dynamics there serves as a background to anything that you're doing, whether you think about it or not, because there it is. But to what degree do you think about German identity, the German state, the German history? I guess, of course, is partly what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Because it no more so than America, but obviously it's such a catastrophic period in Poland and Germany for your parents' generation.
Yeah.
And then you're going up in the wake of that and you're writing poems and then you're translating Americans. I mean, how does that all come together?
Wow, that's a question. I won't answer your question, but I'll just talk about the topic, I guess. Oh well, how to start?
Well,
Yeah,
you're the German state.
There
You are in Berlin. Do you identify with the German state? Do you identify with a kind of non-national context as a European?
Well,
Because you're certainly identified in a way as German when you're outside Germany, when you're writing in German, especially when you're here in the U.S., which you haven't been, strangely. It's so involved with American poetry, but just this is your first trip to the U.S.
well, it's I guess a sense of being part of a never-ending tragedy, being a German. Even if I'm partially from Poland and I was born there, but and
that
I mean,
wouldn't
it's
get
not
you
better.
out of the
It's not better. Yeah,
You wouldn't
yes.
get out of the never-ending tragedy
Yeah,
that way.
I know. So yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, history is always present in Berlin, even if it was cancelled at the end of the 20th century, no? And I was often thinking in the last years, not constantly, but very often, about a poem by Jerome Rothenberg, the sentence, the 20th century ends and the 19th begins again. And that, so what Marx wrote about the Brumaire, that history repeats itself, but the second time is a farce. And I feel we are all in this farce now. And what comes next is the third thing, I don't know. Probably don't want to know. How about you?
Do you feel that poetry that you're writing about? I mean, the thing about Oppen is so interesting because you know about Oppen and his not writing and his relation to the Communist Party, and the political aspect of his work in the form as well as the content. That'd be one way. I mean, and Zukovsky too. They're wonderful poets to think about what I call the politics of poetic form. So how about you? How do you see your work in terms of politics, or not related to politics or ideology?
I think the best thing would be, or I would love to reach this situation where poetry is not in any way commensurable. Yeah, that poets should be outsiders and should show others how to be outsiders as well, and that it's fine. You know, this thing. When I started reading poetry, I was drawn to poets who you would say, no, you wouldn't, but one could say they were mad, insane people. Those poètes maudits. Today you would say they are losers, And I think to be a loser.
Hey, who are you calling a loser?
Sorry, I surrender. No, that's the thing. It should be good to be a loser, because then you're a person. You're someone able to identify with other people. That's the thing. Yeah.
There's a very swirling and unexpected comic quality to your work.
I hope so, yeah.
And it relates to what you just said, but maybe you could, because I think one of the things about the heaviness within some aspects of German poetry and American poetry too is the deep, serious, profound expression, and this is why you mentioned Ugelbau
Yes.
and Schwitter's too. It's aspects to why they're so important, and to me too. But how do you see the comic in poetry? Because I'm sure in Germany, as here, there's a resistance to the comic within poetry.
Yeah,
Because
with poets.
supposed,
Yeah.
well, by poets and people who read it, because it's supposed to be serious and profound and deeply expressive.
Yeah,
and a way
because-
that people feel that the comic values
Yeah.
conflict with.
Because there's a competition between poets, and you want to be as serious as possible, because that means you are serious as possible. You are a person, important. The importance is more related to the seriousness of the writing than to irony or making yourself smaller. I don't know the word. The understatement is not a value per se, sadly.
And that is a politics of poetry to me, to value understatement as
Yeah.
opposed to bombast, overstatement, and profundity.
Hmm.
So, one final thing to throw out to you, which has to do with, related to my first question about performance, about sound, but performance. It seems like hearing you read, even though there's all the sound values in the poems, but when I've heard you read, as tonight, there's something going on with the style of the performance, which is very unexpected, unhinged in the most delightful way, but can't really be in the alphabetic text. So for you, what's the significance of performance, by which I mean, as the person who puts together Pen Sound, and I know you're on Lyric Line as well, which is a comparable site where we're focused on poets reading their work. What's the difference between the printed text of the poem and your performance, and is that significant?
It's, well, I wouldn't say it's the performance part is primary. They are equal. So that the text is one thing and the performance is another. They are, yeah. There's no hierarchy. I mean, when I write, I already start performing it, speaking it, and repeating the words, and trying to get an idea of where this is going. That I write. Well, yeah. I had this in the seminar today when I quoted this one of the children of Jean Piaget, and the child was asked, "What's the thing with which you think?" And the child answered, "I'm thinking with my mouth." So, that's my answer.
You've been listening to Norbert Lange, thinking with his mouth, on close listening. This program was recorded in the Arts Cafe at the Kelly Writers House at the University of Pennsylvania on Halloween Eve, October 30th, 2018. This is Carl Bernstein, tossed in time to the echoes that haunt the space between language, the space called close listening, listen, list, Thanks so much. This is really great. Sorry to put you on the spot, but got to do that in this. So we take a like 15 minutes reception for those resuming in here, and as long as you like for those not. But there's plenty of food and drink, so please enjoy yourselves.